Hello people, welcome back. Here we are for another setup and hot lap video. So this time we are at Spa Francorchamps for the Belgian GP. Well, one of the legendary tracks on the F1 circuit. You never want to miss this race. And let's get into the setup real quick. 7.4 on the wings. That's pretty much the standard setup you want to be running here in Spa. Pretty good straight line speed and pretty good in sector 2 as well, because you'll be needing that to gain some time, follow people easily as well. And this running one click higher than the usual 6.4 or 6.3 definitely benefits you in the middle sector a lot, especially in traffic. Now if you're in a DRS train, you definitely want something a little higher like this, so that you can follow the cars through sector 2, and then in sector 1 and 3 you can just latch on to the DRS and slipstream. And also for Taiwan, this is going to be pretty good. 7.4 is a good baseline to start off. You can go down to 6.4 on your second stint of your race. I'd say if you're starting on mediums, or even on the softs, whichever tires you're starting on heavy fuel, start with 7.4 so that you get a bit more grip on the fronts with heavy fuel. And then in the second stint, whether you're going onto the mediums or you're going onto the softs, whichever strategy you're choosing for the second stint, drop down to 6.4. This will keep the balance in the car not too oversteery. Otherwise, as the car gets lighter, usually the car tends to get more pointy and oversteery, so you want to make sure the car is balanced out in that way. Drop down the wing in the pits. That also comes with extra benefit of straight line speed in the second stint, where you may need to make some moves or defend from other drivers who are possibly attacking you. Transmission 157 as usual. 100 on throttle gives you the best initial traction out of corners. In qualifying, this is definitely what you want to do. In the race, you can drop it down to 95 and then drop it down to 90 as your tires are wearing out. So somewhere around 90 is usually a good range for the race. For the off throttle at 57, this is pretty good because there's a lot of high speed corners here where your car will be coasting, and you are braking, trail braking into some corners pretty heavily, while still keeping a very high minimum speed. So they're pretty high speed corners where you have to trail brake. So such as the piff puff corner, right? Before the two what they call it, I was going to say Lesmos, Stavelo 1 and Stavelo 2. So the chicane before Stavelo 1 and Stavelo 2, so it's a left right chicane, pretty high speed as well, and you need to be trail braking. If your off throttle is a little too low, you will find your car just losing the rear end into those corners. And even in corners like turn 4 and 5 at the end of Camel Straight, the first chicane, right, you may find your car a little oversteery on braking. If your off throttle is a little too low, you can experiment with 56. I would definitely recommend sticking with 57, and you can drop down to 56 maybe for qualifying run if you feel you need a bit more rotation from somewhere without increasing the wing. This would be a good way. 57 for the race is perfect. Suspension geometry as usual, right, left, left, left. You want the rear camber to be all the way to the left, maximum rear camber, so that you get a lot of grip in high speed corners, which there are plenty of in Spa Francorchamps. Suspension, this is where you're gonna gain the time as always, and my favorite is always 1-1 suspension, so you get a good amount of traction, especially coming out of the last chicane, out of the bus stop chicane, and coming out of turn 1. These are the two most crucial traction zones. More so out of turn 1, La Source, that's the most crucial traction zone on the circuit. That is the slowest part as well, and if you get a bad run out of there, that's it, you're vulnerable down the Camel Straight. So 1-1 on the suspension, pretty good over the curbs as well. Even if you mount some of the curbs on exit, your car is not going to kick out on you if you have a pretty stable setup like this. 1 on the front roll bar as always gives the best turn in as well on the front. 4 on the anti-rear roll bar my words. 4 on the rear anti-roll bar, that's just to give you the amount of rotation that you need. Say if you decided to run something like a 6.4 on the wings, right? I'm running 7.4, so if you decided to run 6.4 for some reason and you still need a bit of rotation from the rear, I'd suggest you increase the rear anti-roll bar by 1, and you can also experiment with reducing the off throttle by 1. Don't go any lower than 55 on the off throttle, otherwise you are risking yourself of losing the car in high speeds. So 1114 to start off. Right high, this is another special thing that I've tested out over here. 15 works really well in the race. This 5 right height on the rear gives you a very good straight line speed. Even if you're running 7.4, you don't really feel the effects. Yeah, it's pretty good. You can run 1.6 as well, or you can run 2.6. If you feel the car is a little oversteery, you can definitely increase the front right height, so it balances out the car a bit. So you induce a bit of understeer on the front by increasing the front right height, that balances out the car. If you're having a bit of oversteer or the front is too pointy, if you feel on traction you're still losing the car, or maybe doing high speed cornering, you can definitely increase the rear right height to make sure the rear is a little higher, so that you do not lose the car as easily in direction change and fast acceleration. Now do take into consideration that running 5 on the rear right height really requires a fine amount of control of the car, and you really need to practice with this. Your throttle has to be very smooth, your braking has to be very smooth, and your turning as well has to be very smooth. You can't just throw the car into corners and expect the car to stick. Obviously it's gonna feel good for some amount of corners, but if you overdo it, you're gonna risk losing out the car. So 1.6 might be safer, but 1.5 definitely is where the performance is. 1.7 as well is pretty safe. 2.7 is also pretty safe. The standard 2.7 is usually a good baseline to start off. My recommendation 1.5 if you can go for it, otherwise stick to 1.6 or 2.6. Brakes 150 as always. Stick to this all the time. The only time I would say to use 51 brake bias is into turn 1, maybe if you are feeling that your car is a little oversteery on trail braking. When you're trying to trail brake into turn 1 and your car just oversteers into Narnia, the car just doesn't want to stay on track, you can definitely experiment with one click higher brake bias, so 51% into turn 1. And also for the bus stop chicane, because these two corners, the slowest corners on the track, they require fine amount of trail braking to get the cornering right. So on qualifying runs, I definitely suggest you can push it up to 51% before the corner, and then everywhere else throughout the track use 50% and you should be good. In the dries as well, 150, just in the dry and the wets, they work perfectly fine on 50%. 51 if you really need some stability into turn 1 and bus stop chicane. Tires, rear tire pressures, keep it at maximum regardless of any situation. And then on the fronts, I like to start at 23.4 just to make sure with the higher pressures I get lower tire wear. And yeah, because in Spa the front tires are the ones that take the most beating, so if you reduce the front tire wear, you're gonna feel that there's still a lot of life left in the tires. And yeah, depending on your strategy, soft medium or medium soft, both are equally good. I've tested this out on the soft tires at the start with full race fuel load for 22 laps in a 50% race, and the tires are just marginally around 102 103 at maximum. By the time you arrive at the straights, they already cooled down to like 95 degrees and maybe even 90 degrees. And yeah, that's enough temperature for you to make sure you have enough grip without overheating. You can try 23.0 and 22.6, but the lower you go, the more unstable the front becomes. And the lower you go on the front pressure, you're inducing more rear locking, especially into bus stop chicane and turn 1 lassos. So yeah, if you find yourself having a bit of front locking, that means your front tires are locking up even after the adjustments that you make and whatnot, you can reduce the front tire pressure by one click, so that this balances out the load on the car a bit more rearwards, so you'll get less front locking. And similarly, the opposite is true. If let's say you're getting a lot of rear locking, say you start off with 22.6 psi, you're getting a lot of rear locking into bus stop chicane or into turn 1, right? You can increase the front tire pressure so that a bit more load is applied on the front. kind of like taking grip away from the front and balancing it out, so you get less rear locking. So that's how you can do it. And let's quickly run through what the setup is. So 7.4 for aerodynamics, 157 for on throttle and off throttle. Suspension geometry as always, right, left, left, left. Suspension 1.1 on the suspensions. Anti-roll bar is 1.4. Ride height is 1.5. Brakes 150% on the brake bias, the standard. And tire pressures 23.4 on the front, 23.5 maximum on the rear. Now for qualifying runs, you can definitely adjust the off throttle differential to 56 if you feel you need a bit more rotation in the rear, but be careful with that. Start off with 57 on your first run, and if you feel you need more rotation, then you can drop it to 56 for the second run. If it doesn't feel good, go back to 57 and just hope the track evolution gives you the grip that you need. Alright, and under park for me as well, you can only adjust your tire pressures. Probably you want to drop your front tire pressures by 1 or 2 psi at most, 2 clicks. So maximum 23.4, minimum 22.6 for qualifying run. This will give you extra grip on the fronts in qualifying if you really need to, but just be careful into turn 1 and bus stop chicane. Probably you can use 51% brake bias into turn 1 and the bus stop chicane if you have lower tire pressures like this. All right, so yep. And then adjustments for the wet. If you're having a mixed condition race, it's going to be dry and wet, then you have a decision to make. Do you want to run a full dry setup, or do you want to be faster in the wets? In that case, if it's going to be like a 50-50 kind of weather, right, and you want some sort of stability in the wets, all you need to do is run a higher wing setting. So 8.5 in the wets is pretty good. And I did test a 9.6. It's working even better. The pace is so much better. You're about 1 second faster than running a full dry setup. So 9.6 and 8.5 works really well in the full wet conditions. Only do this if the race is going to be full wets all the way. If it's going to be intermediates all the way, I'd say stick with 8.5. And if it's going to be mixed conditions, might as well run the dry setup so that you are fast on the straights. All right. And ERS regeneration in the wets, it's pretty much unlimited. So you just have to get a good exit out of turn 1, and you can defend all the way down Camel Straight. The other adjustments you probably want to make if there's a wet race, or even a wet qualifying, you can drop the off throttle by 1%. That will make sure you get a bit more rotation into the car, so you get a bit more turn in as well, and this will make your life easy in the wets. On throttle, you can probably drop it to 80%, 75%, even 70%, according to your liking. If you feel the car is wheel spinning too much in the wets, then you can drop it, but not too much. If you drop it too much, you're inducing too much wheel spin. So 50% on throttle I will never recommend. Always stay around 70 and above in the wets. All right, and that should be it. And there's no other adjustments that you can really make under park ferme. Before park ferme, you can still consider raising the rear ride height by 1. For the wets, if there's going to be a mixed condition race, I definitely recommend doing this at least, so that your car doesn't bottom out in the rain. Okay, and that should be it. Tire pressures, you can always keep the same, and that should be it for Spa Francorchamps. So good luck everyone, take care, and I hope you have a good race with this setup. And let's just quickly save this setup as well, so that we remember to apply it in our league race. And hopefully the game is fixed by the time this thing goes up, and we will be able to resume our league racing, which has been stuck for about 2 weeks now. So good luck, and let me know how this setup turns out for you. And check out the other setups that I've prepared for y'all in the playlist linked on the top right and in the descriptions as well. Yeah, let's see what comes out next. It might be Zenmod, it might be Monza, whichever comes first in the league race. So take care everyone, stay safe, and goodbye.